Looking for the best place to shop this Mother's Day? Go with the brand that makes it easy to send something thoughtful to everyone on your list. 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now at 1-800-Flowers, order 1 dozen roses and get another dozen free. More flowers mean more smiles, all backed by the quality, attention to detail, and trusted delivery experience that make 1-800-Flowers my top choice to send something beautiful Mom will love. Make Mom's Day at 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/podcast.
Breaking news for your home. Wayday. Wayfair's big sale is almost here, and you can score the best deals in home. Like up to 80% off everything home. Yes, you heard that right. 80% off with free shipping on everything. Plus surprise flash deals all Wayday long. We're talking outdoor furniture and essentials, rugs, and more. All at Wayfair, and all up to 80% off during Wayday. Shop Wayfair's Wayday from April 25th through 27th.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Geoff Wilson, welcome back to Sports Management Podcast.
Yeah, it's been a while since I was back on the podcast, but it's so good to be back and great to see all the amazing content that you're producing. It's really valuable for the industry.
Thank you, appreciate that. And I would like to start by thanking you because you were on episode 7, and I don't think I had even released an episode at that point. And, someone with your experience and your network to give your time to me at that point is greatly appreciated. And now it's 5 years later, and much thanks to your episode in the beginning to hitting it off.
I appreciate that. But again, it's all down to you, all your hard work. And you can see now people want to listen to the podcast. They're getting great value from it. And you have a variety of guests that just provide really unique, different insights. So it's so good to see the podcast going from strength to strength.
Appreciate that. So if someone doesn't have time to scroll down to episode 7, we will talk about your new book coming for sure in great depth. But for those of the listeners who might not know who you are and what you do, can you give a brief background?
Yeah, so my name, yes, is Geoff Wilson, and as you can hear from the accent, I'm from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Traditionally, I was in the Irish Football Association, so a federation background, before I left and went on my own as a sports consultant. Specifically, I focus in on strategy, marketing, club and league development, board level, and governance, those sorts of areas. I've been very blessed that I've been to 104 countries around the world now. I wouldn't say I'm the most sharpest or most academic mind, but when you've been to 104 countries, you really can gather and glean some amazing tips, some amazing case studies, and you meet so many amazing people and they share the knowledge with you. So I do that for a range of sports, predominantly football, basketball, but also volleyball, motorsport, and a range of other areas. So it's all on that business side, but it's so good to just those different cultures and that I've witnessed and sampled over the time, and so many great people.
Definitely. And 104 countries, that's a lot. I think, if my memory doesn't let me down here, I think it was 80 something last we talked. So you have been continue to travel to see new countries and get new experiences.
It is. I think the problem becomes now there's a number of countries in the Pacific Islands, so I need to get some work. I'm actually doing a little bit of work with Oceania at present, the Oceania Football Confederation. So maybe hopefully at some stage I'll be able to visit a number of those islands, in addition to like the ones in the Caribbean. And so those are the ones sometimes are a bit harder to get to put onto the map, but maybe someday.
Yeah, and as the world is right now, for geopolitical reasons, it might be difficult also to travel to some places. But there are, from a sporting perspective, I mean, there is so many interesting countries out there for sure.
There definitely is. And I think with COVID, what COVID had brought us is becomes natural now to be on Zoom or Teams. Not only people have got ways of doing workshop online, but also consultancy projects, knowledge exchange, follow-ups. So it's now naturally part of our sports ecosystem. There's nothing like face-to-face, but I think people are now that used to doing workshops online. But yes, hopefully now we'll be able to move again and get to some of these lovely locations I've yet to chalk up on my board.
Any specific that you have top of the list that you haven't visited yet?
Would love to go to New Zealand. I've been to Australia, but I've never been to New Zealand. And I think it's the outside, the outdoors and what they do outdoors and also their culture. I think interests me quite a lot. So hopefully sometime I will be in New Zealand.
Yeah. A lot of rugby there, right? Or
There is, and it's a real interesting. I talk about quite often Jamaica and New Zealand. Jamaica is a small country. It's only several million. I think it's maybe 9, 10 million, something like this. But they're always in the 100 meters final or 200 meters final. They've got a real uniqueness. Then if you look at New Zealand, I think it's 3 million. Yet they're pretty much always there. They're the top of rugby with the All Blacks. So there's always something very interesting, I think, when you look at countries like that. Why are they so good in certain sports? And a lot of that probably is down to grassroots within their high school competitions. There's been somebody going before them, the right mentality, the culture of the game. And I just think it's very interesting to talk about these sort of countries where there's a real uniqueness of a sport that they aim at time after time after time every year.
completely agree. And I actually had James Kerr on. He's an author who wrote a book about the All Blacks, and that was a really, really good book and got an insight to like that's religion for them and how they approach games and their mentality and how to behave and everything that goes around that.
Totally agree. I read the book as well, and I could not put the book down. It was that engaging. And I think so many learnings that we can take on the field of play to off the field of play or on the court, off the court. I thought it was great. And there's other books from John Wooden. John Wooden is a UCLA basketball coach in, I think it was in the 70s or something like this. And he has written a range of books on leadership and on like teamwork that are also a real fascinating read. I love those sorts of books. We can learn lots from them.
Yeah, me too. And speaking of books, you're an author yourself, and you're having maybe when we release this in like a few weeks' time, it will be out, but at least now it's for pre order. I saw Leading a Grassroots Sports Club, a practical guide to managing and developing your club. So, can you tell us a little bit about the background for why you wrote this book?
Yeah, I didn't mean to write a book. As I was saying, being to 104 countries, you get information. And that research as such in my mind started to put the concept of best practice. So, for example, there's 10 chapters in the book, but it looks at everything from having good governance, from having a plan, but the club experience, etc., etc., etc. And the more that I went to these countries, it was very similar type of issues that were coming up. And then, if I'm being honest with you, I sort of realized coming from different parts of the world, grassroots, playing for fun, the amateur side is a lot stronger than it is in other countries. So in other words, the pyramid in, let's say, the UK, it's like this. It's grassroots. There's lots of people playing at the bottom, and that fills up the panel, the funnel, sorry. But there's other countries, and it's the other way. It's actually, there's people playing at an older age, but not that many at at younger ages. So this started to get me thinking, and I started to scope out a number of sort of chapters that were constantly being asked by myself. And then I started to put my thoughts down on paper, and I really wanted it to be practical. So process to follow, templates, tips, really practical in its nature. Why? Because I want grassroots amateur sports to be strong in a country. And I want the impact of that grassroots club, both health and fitness, I want them to be around for the future. So have a strong base that has to be good for not only the country, but also the specific sport.
Interesting. So, what are some mistakes that you have seen that maybe grassroots clubs are doing?
Yeah, I think the number one mistake is when they try to get volunteers. On the volunteers, there's maybe limited number of volunteers, so they just go and grab anybody who's got time. We call it putting a square peg in a round hole. So in other words, the person doesn't have the skills to do that. Then what happens, that person does one job, two jobs, three jobs. And at grassroots, that person does lots of jobs. And they then become everything about the club, in essence, is down on one shoulders or maybe two shoulders. So I think the recruitment of volunteers based on skills is really important, but also sharing the workload so that people will not get frustrated year after year, but they're glad to be involved in the grassroots club. So I think that's number one. I think for me, number two is having a great experience. If I'm a kid and the book is for all sports and the coach is shouting at the kid, that's maybe not a great experience. So how do we make that a great experience? How do we make it that they feel more welcomed in the club? How do we get the right culture and the right values in the club so that they feel that that club is them and they feel this is a safe place for them to come back? And then indeed the parents do the same as well. So being a welcoming club, I think, is another area. And then I think the third area is having great coaches. I'm a strong believer you put some of your best coaches at your kids' level, because if you put your best coaches at a kids' level, they're being taught the sport and the technique correctly. So having good coaches that can communicate and have got the knowledge, those are the three things for me.
I love those. And isn't the issue sometimes that in grassroots clubs that the coaches that you have usually on the lower ages are someone's parent, and they might not have the coach's education. They are biased in their decision because they want their son or daughter to play more. You're having these type of issues instead of, you said, maybe to take the best coach and put it on the lower level.
Yeah, I mean, without parents, probably many grassroots organisations, they don't have the structures then in place. So I think what needs to happen, number one, is the parent needs to be trained on the technique. They might be brilliant at communication and maybe they're lacking some of the technical knowledge. It actually might be the other way about. They might have lots of technical and they've played the game at whatever the game is, but they maybe do not know how to manage kids and how to communicate. So I think the first thing that they need to do, the club, is to train. And that might be a mentor, somebody who's been around looking at their sessions, giving them a mentor to be involved in. Just from that, from a simplistic point of view, I think would be really important. Then go on the courses of the federation. So those educational courses, I think that is really important. And then the other bit is the club. The club needs to have a clear philosophy of play. So what is our philosophy of play and how do we develop kids? Is it all about winning or is it all about development? And if it's all about development, what does that look like? What does that mean? And from what age does it go from development to competition? So having a clear structure in place in terms of all of that style, I think, is also extremely important to put in place. And they give the parent the education so they understand. For example, if it's their own kid, maybe it's equal playtime is one of the philosophies when at a certain age group. So to make sure that that happens.
Exactly. And I remember from our last talk that you yourself got a coaching license, not because maybe you wanted necessarily to be a coach, but that you wanted to understand that aspect of it. So I like that a lot, to gain that knowledge so you can better understand and do a better consultant work. So you got that.
Absolutely. So I'm very fortunate. I'm an A-licensed football coach. I've got my UEFA A license, and that has brought so much joy to me, let alone benefit. Number one, I'm coaching my son, and that's special. So it might be your son or daughter, but doing that and going through that together, it's a lovely journey. But because it's an A license, so it's at the top of the tree, I can then give that knowledge at a grassroots level, but then I can use that when I'm being a consultant, because then you're looking at things both on the field and off the field. Then what happens, which is nice, is some of the other coaches from the other clubs, they either come down and watch my sessions, or they ask me to take a session. So I've taken maybe 5 or 6 sessions this year in different age groups within the club. The idea is that we learn together. Now, let me be really clear. I learned from them as well. But they might say, Geoff, can you show me some of the things? And I learned from you. It's about learning together. That's a perfect example of what I'm saying about that coaching side.
For sure. And you mentioned also that if, the coach is screaming to the kids and that's not maybe the environment that they want to be in. So how do you foster a great culture within a club that they feel welcome? And, it's always this that some kids maybe they develop faster, they want to compete more. and how do you not lose them, and how do you keep the players that maybe develop slower, and creating a culture that everyone feels welcome and have fun?
Great question. I think for me, culture starts with what are the values that the club hold? From those values, what are the behaviours? So you just don't stop with values. What are the behaviours under each value? Then once you've got your values and behaviours, how are you going to implement those? And then the next stage is, what culture are you looking? Are you looking a culture of friendliness, development? Or are you looking a culture of it's all about winning? You've got to define that culture. So once you've done the values, behaviors, and how you're going to implement it, and you've set your culture and you've got a culture statement, the next bit then is communication and living that out. So communicating that to the coaches. So whenever new coaches come in, parents come in, kids come in, maybe at the start of every year, you set what the standards are, you set the expectation, you set the values. So let me give you an example. At my son's club, we brought all the parents in at the start of the year, and we told them these are the three values: respect, discipline, teamwork. Then we said, what do those three mean in terms of behaviours? And we said, these are the non-negotiables. Then I would say once a month, and I'm telling you honestly, I was at the football last night and we mentioned them last night. That is not a lie. So about once a month, we reinforce them by verbally, but also we have to live by them, the coaches. So you're trying to make sure that the people live, you remind them, but they live by those values, behaviours and cultures. And it does take time. It does take time.
Yeah. No, of course, that the culture is not built on a day. And going back to the All Blacks as well, that's something that goes for generation to generation. But when you have built that strong culture, when someone new, an outsider, is coming into that culture, then it's pretty clear that you can see that this is the culture, this is what we're doing.
You're absolutely right. And when somebody new comes in, you want them to welcome and all the rest of it. Do they fit in with the culture or do they not? And that in itself is a real interesting dilemma for the coaches. But some people, I think in grassroots, they don't set the standards, they don't set the behaviours, they don't set the values, they don't set the culture up front. And therefore, if you don't know, you don't know. So that's why, to me, it's really, really important to have the right culture in the club that is welcoming, that people want to be involved, that they feel safe, and not only that they want to be involved, but they're learning. And it's a place where they want to be. And they've created friendships, especially at the youth level and bringing them up. For us, what does success look like? We want to see the kid smile. We want to see them smile and enjoy it. We want to see those that are better than our club move to other higher clubs. And then those within our club, they are progressing. And that might be small, it might be big, it might be tactically, but it might be also their personality. But we see them developing and growing. The last thing I would say on that is, I don't think sometimes a coach realizes if that coach is a mentor, an educator, a teacher, all of those bits, how important they are to the life of a child. When that child's growing up, that child will listen to the coach. So that coach has got even more responsibility, not only technically, but to that person as their personality. You don't want to think like that because you're like, oh my goodness. But the coach plays such a vital role.
Yeah, I mean, they could shape a kid's future in a way, in how they talk to them, treat them, what type of values they insist in this child, and so on.
And I work at the elite end, I work at federation end, but during the weekend, I'm at the grassroots end. And this is why I think the book was important for me. If there was no grassroots end, I wouldn't have played football. I wouldn't be still involved, I don't think. My son would not be playing, and therefore he's not getting, okay, he might go to another sport, but in this case, he's building fitness, confidence, friendships that have lasted forever. And there's so many elements that sport can provide that we forget about. And that's why for me, it's so important to have grassroots clubs. To me, they're the fundamental base of any sport. And that is at kids level and then right the way up to senior level playing amateur part of the game. And they might go from this pyramid, which is the grassroots, and flip over to an elite pyramid, which will be much thinner. So what I mean, you might find kids that are naturally good at a sport, they're good enough to go into an elite program, and they get specialized training even more. Maybe their development doesn't happen and they come back to the grassroots. And that's okay. But if those clubs aren't there, either this doesn't happen or the quality going to the elite side isn't as good as what it could be if this was nice and big and fat, this pyramid. So what am I looking for my book? I want grassroots clubs to be about for the future. I want them to have an impact in their community. And for those people involved, that they enjoy it, part of the community, they're developing, all those aspects I've talked about. For me, that's really important in sport.
100%. Couldn't agree more. And all the learnings that you said that you can take from sports, how to win, how to lose, overcoming adversity, mental and physical benefits are just endless.
For me, I can see it when I grew up, but I can also see it through my children. I would say even more so because I'm a bit older. I can now sort of look at what they and how they are developing. I'll put it this way. My son went into a primary school, and the teacher was saying since he has started to play football, his confidence has just blossomed. And he comes in talking about football. It's important to him, but it is bringing him out of his shell. I didn't do that, but the sport did, and the people around him. He goes to school with his friends, and they're a team off the field, let alone on the field. They're buddies, they're friends.
Yeah, 100%. So last time when we spoke a little bit more on like the elite sport. And, then we talked a lot about fan engagement, commercial strategy, sustainability, culture. Are they as important in the grassroots? What's your advice to work with these pillars?
Yeah, resource, no matter where you are, is so important. So in the grassroots, having the right volunteer program. In my football club, my grassroots club, we have just put in a brand new volunteer organizational structure. So there's someone responsible for income, somebody for coaching, somebody for the academy, somebody for grants. All of this is in place to spread the workload. But the second area, as you rightly say, is money. Money is needed, and that money can come from a variety of different areas. My club, we're doing very, very well on grants or foundation income. So in the UK, there's a lot of grants, there's a lot of foundations out there. And what we found very quickly is that not all of them are open to football or sport. So what we did, we have our governance is we're a community sports association. But what we did, we then set up as a limited company with charitable status as a community organisation. And now what happens, I'm able to apply for grants on this mechanism, and I'm able to apply for grants on this mechanism. This now opens us up to more grants that we would bring in, and we might be securing 100 to 120,000 sterling a year just on grants. We have just secured an electronic robot lawnmower. We have just secured 20,000 in solar panels. And all of this has come from this community side, but it has the benefit of the football side because the football use the community organisation and the community structure. So we're seeing grants as a huge area to tap into, and that takes a while to understand what's the criteria. We do not just chase the money. We've got a plan, and the plan is linked to the grants that we apply to. I do think there are other ones, which is local community sponsorship. So whether you're a butcher or you're a baker, they still need people to come into their shops. Well, why not do that through Grassroots? My club has 500 kids. That's 500 parents. Well, it's actually 1,000 parents. That's a lot of people that they can drive into their community business. So that's doing quite well. And then sometimes there's a fee for the kids to participate, and then they get some kit in return, and it pays for a whole range of the rental of the pitches if you don't own them. Now, there are others, But those would be sort of the main things. But for me, it goes back to having a strong structure of people in place and then having a plan that has a clear income streams that feeds. And it's not easy. But again, because I've managed to do that in our club, you can see what's good and what's bad and where the learnings are.
Yeah, but so start with the people, that's what you say, and then build from there.
Start with the people, get the people and make sure you've got a plan in place, link the plan to the organizational chart, then start to get the money in place and where those revenue streams are being. I'm a strong believer, have a brilliant product, the money will follow. You don't start with money. What is it we're looking to do? Have it a great experience, have clear values, all of those bits, have a great product that you're delivering, and the money will eventually follow if you're doing it right.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I have quoted your fan engagement model probably at least 20, 30 times on this podcast when you had like the 4 squares and you have the, game day at the stadium, game day not at the stadium and so forth. When we talk about grassroots clubs, and I mean, maybe ticket sales isn't like the main driver for revenue, but do you still see the importance in having a fan engagement strategy for a grassroots club?
Yes. To me, grassroots is all about community. So the club needs to go out to the community and engage the community and come back into the community. So my club, we have a stitching class, a cooking class, we have an after-school education program, all amateur. We have a church, we have Irish dancing. So it becomes a community. So what happens is people, when it's non-match day, they come to our location and they're doing something, arts, culture, education, and that is educating them, engaging those fans in our club. Then what they do, they're engaged when it comes to if the child has got a game on. So having tea and coffee and making that having somewhere that if it rains, they can go in under. So having that engagement is extremely important. Host meetings of different sports in our clubhouse when there's no match on. So again, that's really important. And then we go outside of our community hub and we go to other like schools and we talk about what we're doing. So what we did, we actually went to a school and we talked about basically business, entrepreneurship. What we said is design a product for my club and we give them the 4 Ps of marketing. So we had 16-year-olds designing a product for our grassroots club. Now, we weren't designing the product, but we were educating them in school on entrepreneurship, on business. And guess what happened? Because it was a sport, they were more engaged. They were talking about, well, what's the cost of the materials? What would the profit be? Where am I going to sell it? And it was business terminology, but in a sports context. And that allowed them as a platform to learn even deeper because it was of interest to them. So we do a lot of those areas. So in answer to your question, yes, we do a lot in this space. So there's a lot of these things that we would do. So the model still exists and is still relevant at a grassroots level.
That's great to hear and very interesting. Any great business ideas that came up from the school when you went out?
Yeah, so one of the ideas I had was like a water jar. So when you go to fitness, you've got your keys of the car and you've got your water jar. So what they were saying, well, where do you put your keys? If you're already changed and you're ready to go to the gym, you bring them with you, you sit them down. So what they said, unscrew the bottom and then put the keys in the bottom and then screw it back on again. So the keys are in the one jar and then if you were getting changed or whatever, it's all in the one little device. Now, these are 16-year-old kids, which is quite interesting. I thought they were saying, well, right enough, you bring your key with you and your water jar. Maybe it's not much of a hassle, but they seen it as a problem. And you weren't leaving your keys behind. Where did I put my keys? No, it's in your water jar. So we just thought that was interesting.
Love that. And I mean, that's how most entrepreneurs start, that they find an issue that they want to solve, right? And then sometimes many people have the same problem, and there you go.
What brought that idea out? Sport. Again, getting back to it, if there's no grassroots sports, we can't do all of this. Imagine in your country if there was 0 grassroots sports. What would that affect the local community? Would people have a sense of community, a sense of pride? Would they have a lack of, maybe I don't play the sport, so I'm not going to go to the elite sport? Less people going to elite sport in terms of athletes just has so many ramifications if this isn't strong. But what the book covers is making sure you've got the building blocks in place, and then how you develop that club each time. So the way that I've actually did the book is, if you have an issue in governance, go straight to governance, you read it, you develop an action plan, you implement it. Maybe you've got one with facilities, you go to facilities, you read it, you do an action plan, the templates are used, and then you do that. You can read it from start to finish, absolutely. But it's better to go in if you've got a certain issue. And the best way to do that, you take the 10 chapters, you get 10 people in a room, and you tick, what's our top 3 issues? And very quickly, you'll start to see there's commonalities. And you say, okay, let's look at this. Now, the last thing I would say on that is, apart from clubs getting it, I'm seeing a lot more federations approach me. And those federations are approaching as part of a club development program and saying, Geoff, would you take the content from your book and then do that on a live webinar or a live, and people get a copy of the book, which means the book really comes alive. So it's so warm and heartening to hear that many sports federations are so interested in grassroots club development, that this is a very interesting way to develop their clubs and to strengthen them, to make sure they're around for the future.
Yeah, no, 100%. And in this process of writing this book, what are some learnings that you have taken?
Oh my goodness, the detail that goes into writing a book. And what I mean by that, copywriting, and getting the copywriting, putting in maybe a figure or a template in the right place, and then referencing them to get the referencing right. That third would be just the design of the book, and to make sure that it's attracting, and it is for all sports. It's not just for one sport. Can be quite a challenge. And then I think it's the fine detail of grammar, spelling, the use of everything common. So do I use a solid bullet point or a flowery bullet point? And if it's a flowery bullet point, they're used right across the book. So the fine detail is probably the biggest thing I've learned from this. I've really, really enjoyed it, but it's so detailed that the amount of time that goes into writing a book, I probably didn't estimate enough. It really does consume you for the detail that you do. But see, when you get to the stage that the publisher says it's done, I'm ready to do a little dance.
I understand that, and I've heard that from other people as well, that it's quite a process to write a book.
It really is. And then you're trying to get friends to look over it to say, is this logical? Is this educational? And that's the bit for me. It's making it logical, making it educational, and making it practical. That's really, really important, so that people can actually say, yep, I could take that away. That makes sense. Okay, away we go.
Yeah. Have you had some trusted people that you ask their opinions, stuff like that? Because sometimes maybe closest family isn't the best one because they want the best for you, but maybe they are not the best in this topic, for example.
Great question. So 7 people that were either sports professors in academic world, also some practitioners in the sports industry world. So what I did there, I got them to look at it. And then once they give all the feedback, I then went to 2 or 3 people that were involved in grassroots sports to say, what does this look like? So it went through the sift a couple of times, but based on experts in the field of sport, but then really experts in the field of grassroots sport. So it went through a couple of filters so that I knew that I was right in the content, or had I missed any content out. So yes, it has gone through respective people, and that's been very insightful to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really smart. So we're in mid-March. This episode probably goes out early or mid-April. When can the listeners and viewers expect to buy the book, and where can they buy it?
The book is for pre-order now. It will be officially launched on the 31st of March, 2026. And you can buy it on Amazon. You can also buy it at Routledge. So Routledge is the publisher, but it's as easy to go to Amazon and to type in leading a grassroots sports club. So Leading a Grassroots Sports Club by Geoff Wilson. You will see it pop up on Amazon or indeed on Routledge, the publisher. But even just go into Google, Leading a Grassroots Sports Club, and the links will come up.
Awesome. You have done your work there, so you're high on the search engines.
High in the search engines. Yeah, it's that in itself was quite interesting, getting the title right, because I actually gave it another title, and it was the publisher said, look, make it what the book is about. Don't be too descriptive or maybe it too fancy. Make it simple. That was a great piece of advice. But for me, honestly, if somebody said to me, Geoff, I read the book, and because of that, I've done 2 or 3 things, they'll not do everything in the book, and that has strengthened their grassroots club. Honestly, that is my utopia. I'm going to say something a little bit stupid. I'm not sure I expect to be a millionaire of this. Definitely not. But that's not why I did it to leave a legacy. I did it that people in their clubs leave a legacy. And if somebody at the end of this says, yeah, my club is better off because of 5 or 6 things or whatever it is that I've implemented, I'll say that's why I wrote the book.
I think that's a great reason for writing a book as well, to try to leave the world in a little bit of a better place.
And I think sport is one of those places that can do that. With everything that goes on, sport allows us to, just has a unique place in the hearts of human beings. Sport is like music, it's like other industries. It just happens to be our industry is sport, which is an amazing industry. We need grassroots sports clubs. Yeah, the more sports, whether you are skating, whether you are handball, ice skating, volleyball, basketball, football, rugby, we all need a strong grassroots pyramid in place.
Completely agree. Now they know where to go and buy the book. It's been a great chat once again, Geoff. I'd like to end on a networking question. So who from your network do you think would be a good guest on this show?
Oh, that's a great question. I have a good friend called Kenny McLeod. So Kenny, commercial manager at Celtic and the commercial director at the Scottish FA. And Kenny is an amazing sports consultant. I would say he's better than me. He's just brilliant. I've learned so much from him. But he takes the theory and makes it really simple and practical, yet so educational. But here's the twist. He has developed a sub-brand called the Hebridean Baker. And he has taken what his learnings from sport and used that in the Hebridean Baker to bake food. He has created a brand. He's on his 5th book. He has toured America. He has got a very clear brand. And how he's doing that story, sport can learn so much. So his background is sport, but where his focus is at the minute is the Hebridean Baker, and the story that he is creating and how he is doing it. Sport can learn so much about building a brand, getting a tone of voice right, distribution channels, getting your exposure or getting attention. Sport can learn so much from his story.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I'd love to have Kenny on the show for sure.
Real good individual as well. Kenny was one of the ones who actually read the book as well. So that's why I say Kenny, and I was with him recently in America when we were with an NBA, NHL, and an MLS stadiums when we were working recently. What he has done in that space. And that's why people would say, well, why would he recommend that? Well, I'm recommending it because what he has done in this space, we can learn so much in sport, and his background is sport. So he's taken this learning. There's so much learnings that we can take from what he's done into sport.
100%. And if he's trusted by you, then he's definitely trusted by me as well.
Well, I love that. And do you know what? It is so good to catch up again. And we need these podcasts to share information, because it might be other people in the industry, but it might be people looking to get into the industry. Exactly. Or it might be people who have got maybe an issue. And after talking or listening to some people, that issue might become more clear. So that's why podcasts like this are so important.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And maybe now I said that was the last one, but now you mentioned that I also ask for advice for young people who want to get into the industry. So if you have something on top of your head.
If you are, let's say, at university and you're doing a sports management, number one, while you're at university, go get a job, build up your CV. The university and the degree is absolutely vital, but what will make you stand out is what's on your CV. So whether you're president of the society at the university or whether you've got a job in sport, that might mean you've got to volunteer. Do it, but make sure the volunteering that you focus on is exactly what you want. If it is social media, say to the club, I want social media. So that's number one. Number two, I would write blogs. Go and do the research, set up your LinkedIn and start to create blog content on a regular basis. Because number one, gets your knowledge, but also allows people to see who you are and what you're doing. Number three, network. Network. Whether that is going to conferences, whether that is going to online webinars, whether that is just reaching out to people on LinkedIn, network with people, and definitely do that. And then the last advice I would say is generalize, don't specialize, which is quite different. A lot of people don't do that. What I mean by that is my specialty was marketing, but very, very quickly I realized if I want to be a leader, I need to know strategy, governance, finance, the technical side, where if I just stayed in one bit, to be a leader, like a chief executive or a leader, that would be really difficult. So if you start to look at different things that you can do. So maybe if you're into PR, maybe do event management. Maybe you're into commercial, do event management. So just widen out your skill sets and build those skill sets up. So hopefully those are 4 practical tips people can take away.
Definitely. I think those are great for sure. Geoff, really, really appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast again. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much and have a lovely week.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the follow or subscribe button on your podcast app so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com, connect with me on LinkedIn, or follow the podcast on Instagram, X, and Facebook @SportsM Podcast.